What I wanted, Telegram, and again this Telegram is not for anything else. This is for my studies only.
To the emergence of sociology.
We had just done this. हमने कैसे किया था कि हम सोशियोलॉजी को डिफाइन करेंगे. इट इज़ द सिस्टमैटिक एंड साइंटिफिक. सोशियोलॉजी इज डिस्क्राइब्ड एज द सिस्टमैटिक एंड साइंटिफिक स्टडी ऑफ सोशल स्ट्रक्चर्स एंड इंस्टीट्यूशंस इंक्लूडिंग नॉर्म्स एंड वैल्यूज. बट वेट, what is intellectual forces? How can we define intellectual ideas or currents, events that led to the changes? So we can start this by, अगर मुझे ये start करना हो, answer are the events or ideas that led to changes intellectual. They are events or events that led to the changes in ideas and thinking.
Intellect.
They are the events that led to the changes in the ideas and thinking.
Intellectual forces. I'm not going to help you on this question. Okay. Once we're done with writing the answer, then I will definitely, but not right now. Okay.
Intellectual forces are the events that led to the changes in the ideas of and thinking.
Now,
and how did the intellectual forces?
I suppose all of you have written the question. How did the intellectual forces lead to the emergence?
And then I will. How did the intellectual forces lead to the emergence of sociology? Third,
of sociology discuss. Okay.
Array.
Okay. Okay, while speaking, because it's a natural process. When you speak, you do not think whether I'm going to speak if they're in the mood or not. Okay, it's a natural process. Now, what are the keywords in this question? I have not even read the question. Okay, some invigilator has, placed this question sheet before me on my table and sitting in the main hall. Okay, I did not even look at the question. What you do in that 1 or 2 minute time until the invigilator asks you to open the seal. Okay, in those 1 or 2 minutes, you simply try to, skim through the papers hidden in the seal or wrapped in the seal. Okay, try to go through. So you only come across keywords. You never come across full question. Okay, so here the keywords are intellectual forces. First keyword. Okay, and second keyword is emergence of sociology. Right? That means I did not see anything, only these two words, prima facie. Okay, when I looked at the question for the first time. First step is over, identification of keywords. Second step is definition. Now the question is, define what define intellectual forces. What is the meaning of intellectual forces? If I were to explain the meaning of intellectual forces without referring to Renaissance, scientific Renaissance, Enlightenment, French Industrial Revolution, these are also, yes, these are forces, but what makes them intellectual forces is something that you have to explain. An intellectual force, if you remember, and if you have read the notes also, that is in the first page itself, it is clearly defined that intellectual forces are the forces which are characterized by change in ideas
So these are basically the events that led to the change in ideas and thinking.
or thinking. Simple, short, sweet, and straightforward. Okay. Intellectual forces are the forces which are characterized by change in ideas or thinking. That means I did not start with any scholar. I did not quote any fancy line given by scholar. Although I know, still I did not. Okay. Because we have to go in a systematic manner. Okay. We cannot start randomly. There has to be a systematic procedure. So first definition. Once we have defined intellectual force, the second keyword is sociology, emergence of sociology. Okay. So you have choice that you may define second definition. If you want to, you may define sociology, or you may simply what you do is to draw one arrow like this to show the relation. Emergence of sociology. Okay, you saw keyword, you identified cause effect between these two. Okay. So cause effect is also over. Now comes the body part. This was introduction. Why such small introduction? Because the question is of 10 mark. And in 10 mark question, you have to write only 150 words. And 150 word means 2 pages. Technically 1 page, the back side of the page it includes, that makes 2 pages. Okay, so 2 pages only, that's it. Including the back side of that 1 page. So only 2 pages are given for 10 mark. Okay. Now, what would I do? I would draw this diagram. Middle age, intellectual forces, modernity, conservative, and then radical, and then finally sociology emerges. Always keep this diagram in your mind. Whatever question comes on origin, you will easily be able to trace exactly where you have to start from and where you have to end. This diagram will help you in doing that. Okay. Whether the question is on a specific event like enlightenment and its contribution to sociology, or whether the question is a broader one like intellectual forces and emergence of sociology. In both cases, these diagrams will help you. Okay. Not just you, it will also help the examiner to understand that you have the clarity. Okay. So most of the times, diagrams are made only to show off your skills. Okay. It is not that diagram exclusively have any specific set of marks allocated to it. UPSC does not give any such suggestion or recommendation to us. But these are generally articulated just to express your creativity and individualism. Okay. You have to compete against so many people. These are small things that can make you different from them. Okay. Now, since the question is intellectual forces led to emergence of sociology, what will I do? I will simply mention here Renaissance, scientific Renaissance, Enlightenment, French Revolution, and then I will explain counter-enlightenment. Remember, I am sure you guys did not write this. Some of you must have written counter-enlightenment, but many did not, I am sure. Okay. Counter-enlightenment was also a process of change in ideas. No? They were also resisting against the so-called change in the idea. So that was also change in idea. That way. Okay. Resistance against the idea is also an idea. Okay. So someone asked me, do you like chocolate ice cream? I would say no. I like vanilla. So that is also an idea. Resistance to the chocolate. Okay. So counter-enlightenment. Now, one thing you also must have noticed, I did not write industrial revolution. Okay. Because industrial revolution generally is not considered as an intellectual force. It was not an intellectual force. It was more of a material force. Remember, generally, this is how we categorize the world also, right? For example, education is an idea. But textbook is not an idea. It is a concrete reality. And you cannot touch education, you cannot see education. But you can touch the textbook and see the textbook. Right? So, education is an intellectual force. It changes your ideas. But textbook is a material entity. Okay? Part of education, but not the intellectual force in itself. Okay? So, this is what you should have written. Now, the second question is, how much of the content should we write on each of these fours? Since the question is only 150 words. Okay, we have to write only 150 words. So, how much of these have to be written? See. I would start with Renaissance. Instead of defining Renaissance or explaining the origin of Renaissance or the whole story of art and all those things, I would simply write keywords. Keywords is a weapon that you guys have. That is the only weapon. Okay, you cannot afford explaining the origins or histories. Okay, that is good for understanding, not for writing. For writing, you should have keywords. Humanism. Okay. Individualism, secularism. Just throw the keywords on the face of examiner. You have to make the life of examiner very easy. You cannot afford to irritate him. Okay. Once you write long paragraphs, he will get irritated. He may not even read the full paragraph. Okay, and he will start searching all by himself. What are those things we have written in this paragraph? And he does not have enough time. And this is a structural issue. That is not a personal trouble. It is a structural issue. They are given certain amount of time to elaborate the papers. Okay. and there are limited set of evaluators. Okay, and those are professors, and they have been given instructions specifically. Who are these people who say they are going to evaluate? These are not a student of sociology. These are students preparing for civil services whose option is sociology. They know all these things, so they are not expecting expertise from you guys. Okay, so Renaissance humanism, individualism, secularism, and then we talk about scientific Renaissance. Okay, basically, when you write this, you would have to explain that the biggest contribution of Renaissance was the invention of man and his potential. Invention of man and his potential was the contribution of Renaissance. Okay, when God declines or when God is questioned, then man is invented. Okay, and scientific revolution is nothing but manifestation of his potential in the natural world, in the exploration of the natural world. The potential that man has to explore, question, then man is invented. Okay, and scientific revolution is nothing but manifestation of his potential in the natural world, in the exploration of the natural world. The potential that man has to explore, the innate potential that man possesses to explore the natural world in his own way, through his own observation, through his experimentation. Okay. So you remember those things very easily. You may write few names if you want to, like Galileo Galilei. Okay. I'm not talking about each line that you have to write. Okay, that would be like, spoon feeding. I don't want to do that. I just want to tell you the structure. So one line on each would be more than enough, and then suddenly after scientific revolution, you explain enlightenment. Enlightenment was nothing but basically the reflection of the same man and his articulation skills, or his curiosity, or his potential to understand the natural world. All those things were reflected even in the social world. He wanted to understand how social world is governed. He wanted to observe by himself what is the scientific form of governance that can be better for everyone. Okay, these all things were happening simultaneously in the social world. Enlightenment scholars were influenced by the scholars from scientific revolution only. Okay, and then comes French Revolution, which was the effect of Enlightenment ideas. And after French Revolution comes the Counter Enlightenment, and with Counter Enlightenment comes conservative, and conservative reaction to the French Revolution had given rise to French sociology. French sociology was considered as conservative sociology, consisting of people who were talking about reforms, not revolutions. They resisted revolutions, they talked about reforms only. Okay. So look, these things are clear to you guys. Okay, so that way you did not have to mention Industrial Revolution, and instead of that you should have mentioned Counter Enlightenment. Okay. So what happening? Cyclic, spoon feeding. I don't want to do that. I just want to tell you the structure. To evaluate the papers. Okay, pages. Okay, this is the, this is how in the natural world, in the exploration of the natural world, the potential that man has to explore, the innate potential that man possesses to explore the natural world in his own way, through his own observation, through his experimentation. Okay, so you remember those things very easily. You may write few names if you want to, like Galileo Galilei. Okay, I'm not talking about each line that you have to write. Okay, that would be like, spoon feeding. I don't want to do that. I just want to tell you the structure. So one line on each would be more than enough, and then suddenly after scientific revolution, you explain enlightenment. Enlightenment was nothing but basically the reflection of the same man and his articulation skills, or his curiosity, or his potential to understand the natural world. All those things were reflected even in the social world. He wanted to understand how social world is governed. He wanted to observe by himself what is the scientific form of governance that can be better for everyone. Okay, these all things were happening simultaneously in the social world. Enlightenment scholars were influenced by the scholars from scientific revolution only. Okay, and then comes French Revolution, which was the effect of Enlightenment ideas. And after French Revolution comes the Counter Enlightenment, and with Counter Enlightenment comes conservative, and conservative reaction influenced by the scholars from scientific revolution and his.
Right.
Articulation skills, or his curiosity, or his potential to understand the natural world. All those things were reflected even in the social world. He wanted to understand how social world is governed. He wanted to observe by himself what is the scientific form of governance that can be better for everyone. Okay, these all things were happening simultaneously in the social world. Enlightenment scholars were influenced by the scholars from a scientific revolution only. Okay. And then comes French Revolution, which was the effect of Enlightenment ideas. And after French Revolution comes the Counter Enlightenment. And with Counter Enlightenment comes conservatives. And conservative reaction to the French Revolution had given rise to French sociology. French sociology. French sociology was considered as conservative sociology, consisting of people who were talking about reforms, not revolutions. They resisted revolutions, they talked about reforms only. Okay. So I hope these things are clear to you guys. Okay, so that way you did not have to mention Industrial Revolution, and instead of that, you should have mentioned Counter Enlightenment. Okay. Okay. Even if you had not mentioned radical reaction, that would still be fine because we are not talking explicitly about industrial revolution here. Although radical can also be written in case of French Revolution, like for example, Karl Marx says that French Revolution was a bourgeois revolution, but still, even if we do not write radical, that is okay. Okay, now now comes the important part. Now the question is, what is this intellectual disorder that August Comte is talking about? August Comte, although Kant as a factor has been. Okay, so but then I realized, I started wondering, is this what Karl Marx talked about when he says alienationism?
मुझे समझ नहीं आया सर फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन क्यों नहीं मेंशन्ड है अच्छा इज देयर एनी पर्सन जो खुद ही भूल जाता है कि वो क्या ढूंढ रहा था या आई हैड टू सर्च दैट Tell me something. The question was, what are the intellectual forces that led to the development of sociology? What should be the model answer for this? So the teacher said that, intellectual forces, it refers to the events that led to the changes in the ideas and thinking, and mentioned Enlightenment, Renaissance, French Revolution, but not Industrial Revolution. Can you explain me why?
Saying what is the demand? See, some of the students have started explaining emergence of sociology. This, what are those things have already been jotted down on the paper sheet or on the answer sheet that you have been given, and more so, you'll also be given personalized feedback. Okay. However, we need to discuss what the demand of the question was. Okay. And before that, let me reiterate the same question once again. The question given to you, released at 8 a.m. today morning, was examine how the emergence of sociology posed a challenge to the established disciplines. Okay, please try to understand the question. The demand.
One second, ma'am. But my teacher, said that intellectual forces refer to the ideas, events that led to the change in the ideas and thinking, and then mentioned about Enlightenment, Renaissance, French Revolution, but not Industrial Revolution. Can you explain me that? कुछ नहीं मुझे। So the question is, I don't know why I'm not able to open this ये बिल्कुल ख़त्म हो गया है. 1 सेकेंड ना.
Try to understand what is the good consistency here. Hello everyone, I welcome all of you to the first ever discussion lecture on DAMS Daily Answer Writing and Mentorship Program on Sociology 2021. As you have already written the answers and most of you must have gotten a copy evaluated by now, you must have realized that there are some inconsistencies in your answers.
Sociology developed as a conservative reaction to modernity. Modernity refers to the. Do you agree? Modernity refers to the changes. No, I will not start like this. I will start like modernity refers to the changes in the culture, values, ideology brought about by the historical context of European modernity. Then, though modernity solution to the traditional beliefs, development, inequality, poverty in the society. So though it came as a solution, what was it? It was a solution, right? So though it came as a solution to the traditional beliefs, but it had certain social problems also, right? Because modernity includes industrial revolution like slum development, inequality. So it had certain social problems like slum development. Enlightenment scholars D. Bonald and D. Meister deplored these ideas in the name of modernity. These scholars who countered the Enlightenment and French Revolution changes, these scholars who countered and they came to be known as conservatives or counter Enlightenment scholars. So these scholars who countered the Enlightenment and French Revolution changes are known as conservatives. What is deplored? First it is not 15 minutes, it is 10 minutes. Second, the time period is from 2 to 3 o'clock and there is no target. Yeah, the target is sociology. Deplored means criticized these social changes in the name of modernity. They are known as conservatives. So they are known as conservatives. They wanted to reform the social changes to re-establish social order. That was present before the French Revolution. Is Auguste Comte and Durkheim conservative? Why are you mentioning 1 and 2 hours? Just simply mention second hours. The time period, that is 2 o'clock to 3 a.m. ये देखना पड़ेगा मुझे. देखना पड़ेगा थोड़ा सा ना. चलें आगे करते हैं. नेक्स्ट तुम्हारा आ जाता है इसके बाद वही. इसमें मुझे थोड़ा सा डाउट है, पता नहीं आंसर क्यों नहीं खुल रहा.
The demand of the equation is very important. Examine how the emergence of sociology and there are something.
Conservative, it is not.
Things which need to be addressed in your answer. What are those things have already been jotted down on the paper sheet, on the answer sheet that you have been given, and more so, you'll also be given personalized feedback. Okay. However, we need to discuss what the demand of the question was. Okay. And before that, let me reiterate the same question once again. The question given to you, released at 8 a.m. today morning, was examine how the emergence of sociology posed a challenge to the established disciplines. Okay, please try to understand the question. The demand of the question is very important. Examine how the emergence of sociology posed a challenge to the established disciplines and how did the interaction between them shaped the contemporary discourse of sociology. Okay, so let us try to understand what is the demand. See, some of the students have started explaining emergence of sociology. This is not what has to be addressed. The demand is something else. The demand is how sociology. Simply ignore the emergence. Okay, this was voluntarily, intentionally given. Okay, you don't have to give importance to emergence part because largely the demand of the question is the interaction between disciplines and how it influences the discourse of sociology, what today it is right now. Okay, how the interaction between disciplines expanded the scope of sociology. Okay, or how the critique posed by the sociology to the established disciplines, or how the interaction between those disciplines along the sociology changed the very subject matter of sociology. This is something that we had to discuss. Okay, so let us try to understand how do we tackle this question. See, first thing is we can briefly discuss, very briefly we can discuss how sociology emerged and how the emergence of sociology is rooted in Enlightenment, French and Industrial Revolution. As most of you already know, see, let me explain it here. हम यहाँ पे आराम से चलते हैं. Okay. Industrial Revolution.
बट मेरा चल नहीं ना रहा, इसको यहाँ पे रोको.